What is going on, everybody? Episode 4 of the Offset and Penalties podcast. Man, I'm ripping these episodes out. I love doing these, regardless of the view count, the like count, whatever. I love doing these. And we're talking about some football today. We're previewing week 8. I'm filming this Thursday night. So, Thursday night football just went down. I'll talk about that a little bit and we'll preview the week. I'll go game by game, not really some of the less notable games we won't really go in depth on. I'll give you guys some of my favorite bets of the weekend, some of my favorite props, and we'll get out of here. I appreciate everyone for watching or listening as always. I really do appreciate it. I know this is just the beginning, so the people who are listening while we're in the early stages, still figuring this out, I appreciate you guys more than you could ever realize. And without further ado, let's get after it. Week 8 is upon us in the NFL season. The season's going by very quick, and the season's wide open, especially in the NFC. I touched on that on my Week 7 recap pod earlier in the week. The NFL is wide open right now, and the NFC in particular. I mean, it's crazy. We've got a big bye week this week. 8 teams on bye. I hate that the NFL does that. NFL, why can't you just space your bye weeks out? I know it's easier said than done to make a schedule, but please space your bye weeks out. Regardless, we're here. This is week 8. Thursday night football. I was working, so I didn't get to catch the full game. I only got to catch bits and pieces. Went back and watched the big portions of it. Chargers 37, Vikings 10. Crazy, because I think people coming into this game, including myself, thought Minnesota was going to hold their own. Like, I thought that was very apparent. Minnesota just played a close game against Philly. The Chargers have not looked hot, especially in recent weeks, but the Chargers took their lunch money. They messed them up. And I want to emphasize, I tell my friends this, the people that know me, I always say this. The 3 most important positions in football are quarterback, offensive tackle, and edge rusher. And that's not some crazy statement or anything, but when you lose an offensive tackle, especially an offensive tackle of Joe Alt's caliber, it is so detrimental to your team. Joe Alt was back tonight, and it was night and day. The Chargers were running the ball unbelievable. Kamani Vidal, who is not like, Kamani Vidal is a solid player. He's not like a Pro Bowl running back, was just gashing the Vikings run defense. And I really think Joe Alt is such a difference maker for this offense. It's night and day. Them losing Rashawn Slater in the preseason was so brutal because Rashawn Slater is one of the best in the league at his position at tackle. So is Joe Alt, and they lost both of them there for a period of time. That's brutal. Obviously, Slater's done for the year, but Joe Alt being back really made a huge difference for them. They ran for over 200 yards on the game, and Herbert went for 227 and threw 3 touchdowns. No Quentin Johnson. Quentin Johnson didn't have a catch in this game, which is weird because early in the year when the Chargers were looking like they did tonight, Huge was a huge part of their offense. No Quentin Johnson tonight. Keenan had an okay game. Lad McConkey and Gadsden, the rookie tight end, he looked really good for the Chargers. On the flip side, Minnesota, Carson Wentz or J.J. McCarthy, I think right now Vikings fans are missing Sam Darnold, man. And I think those final 2 games really kind of ruined our perception of Sam Darnold in his time at the Vikings, because that final game against the Lions and then the playoff game against the Rams, Darnold didn't look great. He looked like Sam Darnold of old with the Jets and the Panthers. But it's very clear Sam Darnold's playing his ass off in Seattle right now, and it's very clear that the Vikings miss him because the Vikings won 14 games with Sam Darnold last year. They are not winning 14 games this year. And J.J. McCarthy had 1 good quarter of football against the Bears, and then those first 3 quarters against the Bears, and then that entire game against Atlanta, he looked just not great. And Carson Wentz has had some flashes, but for the most part, it hasn't been great. When they beat up on Cincinnati early in the year, that was a product of the defense. When they won in London, it wasn't exactly a high-scoring affair against the Browns. Carson Wentz hasn't been great. He's made some good plays, and I guess he's helped the fantasy value of the receivers like Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, but he hasn't looked great, and neither has J.J. McCarthy. The Vikings missed Sam Darnold, and I get it. You invest first-round capital into a quarterback. You feel like this is the guy you got to run out there, but in hindsight, I think the Vikings would give Sam Darnold a quarterback contract this offseason because, frankly, Seattle's paying him, but they're not paying him like the elite quarterbacks in this league. It's kind of a Baker Mayfield contract. So they miss Sam Darnold for sure. It's very apparent. And I think right now it's safe to say, even though they beat the Bears early in the year, it's safe to say Minnesota's probably the worst team in the NFC North right now. That's unfortunate because I would say they have a really good defense. Giving up 37 points isn't a good defense. But regardless, they have a good defense. They have good coaching. They have unbelievable weapons on offense. But, Christian Darrisaw's been in and out of the lineup. I was just talking about the importance of offensive tackles. He's almost, if not as good as Joe Alt. And, he left today's game. He's been in and out of the lineup. Not great for Minnesota. Not ideal right now. And that's that. That's Thursday Night Football. The rest of the week, we're going to go window by window. And let's start things off in Baltimore. And man, this is going to be weird. The 4-2 Bears take on the 1-5 Ravens. Who would have ever guessed before this year that the Ravens would be 1-5? Not me. I would not have guessed. Baltimore's 1-5. They're 6.5-point favorites in this game. 49.5-point over-under. They're 6.5-point favorites, which tells me that Vegas believes Lamar Jackson will be playing and starting for the Ravens this game. I'm recording this Thursday night. I don't know his injury designation coming into the game. That'll come out tomorrow on Friday, which is when this podcast will come out. So maybe you already know. I would think he's going to play, and he's been limited the past 2 days with his hamstring injury at practice. I think that's more just a precaution towards, you don't want a quarterback to re-aggravate that injury at practice of all things. So, if Lamar's here, it definitely helps the Ravens' case for sure. Of course it does. It's Lamar freaking Jackson. But the Baltimore defense has been so bad this year. It's been so bad. It's hard for me to think that the Ravens are going to manhandle the Bears, who are, playing some good football right now. Is it against the greatest opponents? Not necessarily. I haven't really been impressed by Caleb Williams. Meanwhile, you see a guy like Drake May in year 2, and you're like, whoa, this is a second-year step for a quarterback. I haven't really seen that with Caleb yet. And maybe it's just going to take more time for him and Ben Johnson to click. But regardless, I think the Bears have been playing some good football, and it's kind of disrespectful of them to have it at a 6.5-point line. With that being said, I would still, if Lamar's in the lineup, I'm still taking Lamar, because I was just talking about how bad the Ravens defense is. Chicago's defense isn't much better. Now, it's a little better. Them not having Jalen Johnson at corner this year really hurts them. But the Ravens, despite Lamar Jackson, despite Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers is great. Mark Andrews is still Mark Andrews. He's not what he once was. Even though they have a great offense, the Bears have a good offense too. Probably not as good as the Ravens, and both these teams don't have great defenses. For that reason, if I'm a betting man on this game, I'm betting the over at 49.5 points. And even though that's a high over-under, I still think with how mediocre to bad these defenses have been and how much potential these offenses have to put up points, even though Caleb hasn't been great, the Bears offense can still score. Robo Duze and DJ Moore are great. DeAndre Swift, I really like the way that they're utilizing DeAndre Swift now. My knock on DeAndre Swift as a running back his entire career has been the ball carrier vision is not good. And Ben Johnson is finally just throwing him the ball in space and running him to the outside. And he's a phenomenal athlete. He gets to the edge. He runs past guys. He makes guys miss. That's what DeAndre Swift's good at. So DeAndre Swift still might not play in this game. He's got an injury designation. But I think I'm going to take the Ravens in this one. But if I'm confident in one bet in this game, I'm taking the over. I just don't have any faith in either of these defenses. And that's that. Next morning game. We had this game 2 weeks ago. Giants at 2-5 are going to Philadelphia this time. They're playing the 5-2 Eagles. Philly are 7.5-point favorites. The game's over-under is at 43.5 points. Look, man, 2 weeks ago on Thursday Night Football, the Giants upset the Eagles. But this isn't going to be the same game. This just isn't. And for a couple of reasons. For one, Philly didn't have Jalen Carter last time around. Jalen Carter is a huge deal. He's their best pass rusher. Zadarius Smith just retired. Brandon Graham just came out of retirement. Right? Brandon Graham's a great player. Is he going to dominate straight out of retirement? Call me crazy. I don't think so. Zadarius Smith was their best pass rusher before he retired. They need Jalen Carter. They have to have Jalen Carter on this line. And without him, God, it makes all the difference in the world. So Jalen Carter being back for this one is huge. I think this game being in Philadelphia is huge. And I think this game not being on a short week is huge. Now, the reason that particular thing is huge is because when teams playing on Thursday Night Football, weird stuff happens, right? We saw the Niners go to LA and beat a Rams team with all with all the injuries the Niners had. They had no business winning that game, but they did because Thursday night, weird stuff happens. Short week, teams don't have the time to study the film. It just happens. I think the Eagles are pretty safely winning this game, but the line's at 7.5 points. And if you've watched the Giants play football since Jackson Dart and Cameron Scadaboo have been together running that backfield, it's night and day. It is a night and day football team. Russell Wilson is just god-awful at football at this point in his career. And Jackson Dart's pretty good, and Cameron Scadaboo is really good at football. And I think that them being 7.5-point underdogs is really a reflection of that collapse they had last week in Denver. They were playing amazing against Denver that entire game, and it really just crumbled in that fourth quarter. We saw what they did against Philly. This isn't me saying the Giants are gonna win, because I don't think they are. I think everything's going good for Philly except for A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown might not play. He hasn't practiced Wednesday or Thursday. We'll see about Friday. But he's got a hamstring injury. If they don't have him, that does change things a little bit. Regardless, I think Philly wins this game. They're too good to lose to the Giants twice within 3 weeks. With that being said, the 7.5-point line is extremely disrespectful to the Giants, just for the simple fact that the Giants have been competitive and really good in all the games. It seems like all the games that Jackson Dart and Cameron Scadaboo had started for them. So that's my 2 cents on that game. I'm still taking Philly, but I think if I were to bet, I would take the Giants with the points. And I think you see Philly win by 3 or 4 points here, maybe 5 points, and it's a good team win for Philly. You know, it wasn't like they blew the Vikings out of the water last week, and we just saw what happened to the Vikings against the Chargers. So that was that. Next game I want to touch on, my 49ers at 5-2. How are they 5-2 with these injuries? I don't know. It's all coaching and culture. Follow me on Instagram at Offsetting Penalties, because you saw I posted a reel about that. But in this game, they're taking on the 2-4 Texans. Houston is 2.5-point favorites in this one, which is really surprising to me. 43.5-point over-under, not the highest in the world. This was surprising to me that Houston was favorites, because a lot of time people like recency bias is a real thing with people. And, you know, we just saw the Niners look really impressive on Sunday night against Atlanta, and we just saw Houston look god-awful against Seattle on Monday night. Now, Houston's offense looked god-awful against Seattle. They forced the Seahawks' offense, which has been really good, to turn the ball over 3 times. Houston's defense is elite. It just is. Houston's defense is unbelievable. And I think the Niners still don't have Purdy. They still don't have Pierce Hall. You know, an elite defense like the Texans could pose some problems for a team with a backup quarterback. I know Mac Jones has played great, but, you know, he's still a backup quarterback, you know. So I think we're looking at the Niners, you know, I think they win this game. You know, I'm a Niner fan, so I'm trying to take bias out of it. I think they win it, but it's weird that I saw these odds at Houston -2.5, because everyone I've talked to thinks the Niners win this game. It feels like social media thinks the Niners win this game. When you just look at the records and you just look at recent games played, the Niners win this game. But Houston's defense is a great equalizer. Now, their offense has been god-awful this year. The only 2 games their offense was good was against Tennessee and Baltimore, and those are 2 of the worst defenses in the league. And Nico Collins is probably not playing this game, and Christian Kirk is not playing this game. So now they're down their top 2 receivers. I like Dalton Schultz a lot in this game. He's questionable as well. Man, they're beat up too. There's injuries all over the NFL. I know there is every year, but this seems especially crazy this year. I like Dalton Schultz a lot in this game. And on the opposite side, I like George Kittle a lot in this game. Now, I know it's National Tight End Day, and that's always, you know, like people like betting with their heart and say National Tight End Day. I think tight ends will be great. But I like the overs on Schultz and Kittle's receptions and receiving yards, because I think they're both in good spots. Schultz, there's not really much of a competition for targets there. You've got Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins. Nothing crazy, some rookies. I think C.J. Stroud is going to, you know, with how bad that O-line is, I know the Niners' D-line isn't very good, especially with no Bosa, no Bryce Huff this week. But I think C.J. Stroud still, because they've got such a bad O-line, going to try and get the ball out a lot. Dalton Schultz has those short area targets. And on the flip side, George Kittle is infamous. He's just infamous for when he has a down week 1 week to come back and have an explosion week the next week. It just happens. That was his first game back from injury. He was getting conditioned. He hadn't been, you know, playing. He wasn't in game shape from the last 3, 4, 5 weeks that he was out. And I think this is going to be a big George Kittle game. I think this is going to be a big Dalton Schultz game. I like the Titans in this one. I think the line's a little disrespectful for what the Niners have been doing, but I understand it just because of the Houston defense. No Purdy, no Pearsall, no Warner, no Bosa. The list goes on. And it's a 10 a.m. kickoff. Now, I'm taking the Niners in this game, and I'll take the Niners money line in this one or the Niners plus 2.5, either one. And the reason I say that is because I think the Niners have just shown they're the more well-rounded team. The Niners haven't looked, for a 5-2 team, they haven't looked like world beaters this year, obviously, but I just think that they're more well-rounded than Houston. Houston's got a big issue on offense, a huge issue on offense. And I think that even though the Niners, it's not great for a West Coast team to have a 10 a.m. kickoff or a 1 p.m. Eastern kickoff, I think that regardless, Houston's coming off of a 7 p.m. kickoff game on Monday night, right? One of those weird late Monday night games. That's, in Houston time zone, I believe that game would have kicked off at 9 p.m. So the Houston Texans, where they live, their body clock was at 9 p.m. when that game kicked off on a short week. I think this is shaping up to be a Niners win, but it's not going to be an emphatic Niners win just because the Houston defense is so good. So give me the Niners plus 2.5 or the Niners money line, whichever one, floats your boat more. And that's that. The final morning game I want to talk about in depth, the Buffalo Bills at 4-2 versus the Carolina Panthers at 4-3, games in Carolina. Buffalo minus 7.5. They're 7.5 point favorites. The over-unders at 45.5 points. This is a weird one, man, because Buffalo, we were talking about them through a couple weeks, like these guys are the AFC champs. This is Buffalo's year. They're going to the Super Bowl. I was one of those people. And then it turned out, okay, the Baltimore win didn't age as great as we thought it did. Some of the other wins didn't age as great as we thought they did, like the Miami win. Like, it felt great, and it's kind of come crashing down. Lost to New England, lost to Atlanta. I think those are two quality teams, especially Atlanta at home. Atlanta's a really good team at home. But Carolina, despite their 4-3 record, they looked impressive in that Atlanta game, but that felt more like Atlanta shooting themselves in the foot more than it felt like Carolina taking advantage of that game. Carolina hasn't looked like a 4-3 team. They're kind of similar to the Niners in my eyes. Obviously, the Niners are better than the Panthers, but it kind of felt similar in my eyes where it was like, okay, they're 4-3, but the roster's probably not 4-3, and maybe they benefited from some other circumstances. Regardless, this game they don't have Bryce Young, and it's probably going to be Andy Dalton. I don't know if that's necessarily a hindrance on the Panthers or not, but it definitely changes things a little bit. I think Bryce Young's a better improviser. The Bills are coming off of a bye, which will be big for them. Teams always, for the most part, play good at coming off of their bye. They lost 2 in a row before the bye, which obviously wasn't great. So the bye probably came at a good time to stop that negative momentum. I still think Buffalo probably wins, but what makes this game pretty close and pretty complicated is Buffalo's defense has not been great this year. Their run defense has been especially atrocious this year. And Carolina has ran the ball really, really well, especially with Rico Dowdle. Rico Dowdle is a hell of a player. And now it's kind of him and Chuba splitting. If Rico Dowdle on 50% of the snaps, I still could see going for 100 yards against this Buffalo defense. I like, it feels too obvious that Buffalo's going to win. And I'm just hesitant. That defense, we've seen them lose 2 games against New England and Atlanta, who are not elite teams, but they're not like bad teams. They're playoff caliber teams in my eyes. Carolina's 4-3, which means they should be playoff caliber. I could see them running the ball in this game and it happening, but I don't know if Carolina's defense is there to be able to defend Josh Allen and what he is. So I'm still taking Buffalo in this game, but I'm probably not betting the minus 7.5 in this game. I just think Buffalo's run defense scares me too much, and I think that could neutralize the game a bit. Still an interesting game, a really interesting game. I'm very intrigued by this one. 3 other morning matchups. Not going to talk about them in depth. Cleveland versus New England. New England's 7.5 point favorites in that one. New England's looked amazing. They really have. Drake May's playing out of his mind. He looks awesome. Their defense is good. This will be a good test for Drake May because I think there's a lot of steam on Drake May right now. A lot of people are hyping Drake May up a lot, and I understand it. Cleveland's defense is elite. And I think if Drake May really comes out and slings it against this Cleveland defense, I think we're looking at like, whoa, okay, is Drake May an MVP candidate? Miami 1-6 is going to Atlanta facing the 3-3 Falcons. I was just talking about it. The Falcons are a home team, and Penix, is questionable. He's a little banged up right now. If it's Penix or Kirk, I like Atlanta in this one, and I just think the wheels are falling off in Miami, man. I think Mike McDaniel, the whole cool guy coaching stick worked for a bit. It's not working anymore. The locker room's lost the respect. Two was talking about how he can't see his receiver. He can't see Jalen Waddle when he throws it. If you just want to say you're being forced to throw with anticipation, that's fine. When you phrase it the way he did, it's concerning. I like Atlanta in this one. Atlanta's, Miami's defense isn't great, and I think Atlanta is a home team. They'll be able to utilize their speed, utilize their youth, like Bijan, like Tyler Algier, like Drake London. So I think Atlanta wins this one. If they win it emphatically, I think I would be surprised if McDaniel kept his job or if there wasn't some big shakeup in Miami. That's just my opinion. In the final morning game, the 0-7 Jets, man, taking on the 3-4 Bengals. Tyrod was like questionable at practice. I would, if Tyrod's healthy, it'll probably be him this week because Justin Fields hasn't looked great. I did see a stat, and it showed Justin Fields' record with the Steelers and Jets and Aaron Rodgers' records with the Steelers and Jets. And it becomes very apparent that it's not a quarterback problem, it is a player problem. Or an organization problem, excuse me. With that being said, I still think Justin Fields, they gave him this big contract and he really hadn't shown anything in this league to prove that he could be like a franchise quarterback and get a franchise type deal. So, the Jets, they're kind of on number one pick watch right now. They can't win a game and they're playing Cincinnati, who's coming off of their biggest win of the year. Joe Flacco slinging it. And I think the one thing the Jets do have going for them is they do have a pretty good pass rush. And what Joe Flacco did so well against the Steelers is he just got the ball out quick before the pass rush could get there. And I think we're looking at Joe Flacco slinging the ball around, big Jamar Chase game, big T. Higgins game. Give me the Bengals pretty safely in this one. If the Bengals lose this one, yikes. Not much more to say on that one. There's 3 afternoon games. The one I want to really talk about, I'm so excited for this game. I think this game's going under the radar, even though it's the premier 425 window game. The Cowboys at 3-1 are going to Denver to play the 5-2 Broncos. Broncos are 3.5-point favorites in this one. I get it. 50.5-point over-under, which is wild considering how good the Broncos defense is. The Broncos just came off that wild game against the Giants. It's a very draining game. To score 33 points in a quarter is wild. It's absolutely nuts. With that being said, I think the Broncos could use that fourth quarter and the momentum their offense got in that fourth quarter. I think it could carry over to this game because this game is a strength versus strength game and a weakness versus weakness game, and I'll elaborate on that. The Cowboys offense is probably the best offense in the league. The Broncos defense is probably the best defense in the league. The Cowboys defense is probably the worst defense in the league. The Broncos offense has looked great and looked not great at times. They looked really bad for 3 quarters against the Giants and then turned it on, boom, J.K. Dobbins chunk play. The Cowboys defense is a joke. It just is. I'm sorry to my Cowboy fans listening. You have the worst defense in the league. One of the worst defenses I've ever put my eyes on. And I could really see Bo Nix and that offense just carrying the momentum they found in that fourth quarter into this game. Football doesn't always work that way, though. It doesn't. And it's easy to get momentum when your defense is constantly getting stops, getting the ball back, and your offense feels like it's always on the field. The Giants' offense isn't what the Cowboys' offense is. The Cowboys' offense is legit good, legit scary, and they're healthy because they've got CD back. I think the Broncos' defense is so good. But in a league that just feels offense-driven, I think we're looking at an elite offense versus an elite defense. I think the elite offense will always have a little bit of an edge. With that being said, I'd imagine Patrick Surtain follows CeeDee Lamb as much as he can. For that reason, I do like, if you're going to bet on this game, I like taking George Pickens over on his receiving yards at 57.5. George Pickens is always due for 1 or 2 bombs in a game. All he needs is like 1 or 2 of those, and he'll hit this over, and he shouldn't have Surtain on him a bunch. He'll have Surtain on him every once in a while when they move CD in the slot and stuff, but for the most part, Pickens will be taking on Riley Moss and some of the other DBs that Denver has to offer. So I like George Pickens in this game. I think this is a big Pickens game, and regardless, man, This is a fun game. This is strength versus strength. I love these matchups. The best offense in the league versus the best defense in the league in my eyes. I'm unbelievably excited for it. This is going to be a fun, fun game. If I had to pick, I'm leaning the Broncos because the Broncos, offense is middle of the pack and just inconsistent. The Cowboys defense is genuinely horrible and at the very bottom of the pack. So, I lean Denver, but the Cowboys offense is so good, they could just score 45 points against anyone and win a game. So that's that. Other afternoon matchups, Tampa Bay at 5-2 going to New Orleans, who's 1-6. Baker was talking a little bit of crap towards the Saints this week, saying he didn't like them. This is a divisional rivalry, so I get it. Tampa should win this game. If they don't, serious issues in Tampa. The other 125 window game, or the other afternoon window game, Tennessee at 1-6 is going to Indy at 6-1. I believe these teams already played each other earlier in the year. The Colts are just looking so good, man. They're so great. Jonathan Taylor is probably going to score another 3 touchdowns in this game because Tennessee's run defense is a joke, and obviously Jonathan Taylor's playing like an offensive player of the year right now. Those are the 2 afternoon matchups. Sunday Night Football. This Cowboys-Broncos is the game I'm most excited for. This is probably the game I'm second most excited for. The Packers, 4-1-1, are going to Pittsburgh to play the 4-2 Steelers. Aaron Rodgers, I believe, is playing the Packers for the first time since he left them, right? Because I don't think the Jets ever did. This is gonna be awesome. I'm so excited for this one, just to see Rodgers playing against the Packers. Green Bay's 2.5-point favorites in this one. Road favorites, 45.5-point over/under. Rodgers return against Green Bay, and I gotta say, Rodgers has looked really good this year. And like I was talking about a little bit earlier, it has become apparent to me that Aaron Rodgers' issues were probably more of a Jets thing and a post-torn Achilles thing than they were, an Aaron Rodgers age thing. And I think that the Steelers' offenses look good, and what's really been the letdown for the Steelers this year has been that Mike Tomlin-led defense. It hasn't looked great, and they just brought in a bunch of vets from different places, Darius Slay, Jalen Ramsey, some of the vets they already had in the building, and just put together this defense, and it hasn't looked great. What the defense does have going for them is a pass rush. They have an amazing pass rush. TJ Watt is still TJ Watt. And Green Bay's offensive line is sneakily, because people have loved Green Bay this year, has sneakily been has graded out as one of the worst offensive lines in the league. So I really think Pittsburgh's pass rush could be a real neutralizer this year. Green Bay struggled with Arizona last week. Now, granted, Arizona plays everyone tight. Green Bay, for being 4-1-1 and for being these perceived Super Bowl, contenders, they've looked so hot and cold this year. They've got some moments of brilliance and some moments where it's like, really? What is going on? I think the offensive line is a big part of that. I think people don't really talk about that a ton. For that reason, I actually do like Pittsburgh in a home upset at 2.5 points. I know it's kind of hard to think about considering they just came off of a Thursday night loss to a Cincinnati team that they probably shouldn't have lost to. Like I touched on earlier, Thursday night games are always weird. They're a good neutralizer. I think Pittsburgh's got some increased rest. Green Bay's on the road for a second straight week. They went west to Arizona, now they're going east to Pittsburgh. I really like Pittsburgh in this one. I like Aaron Rodgers getting his last laugh against the Packers before, I saw a quote today that he was going to return back to the Packers. I really do like Aaron Rodgers in this one, and the Steelers in this one, but it's going to be fun no matter what. The scenes of Rodgers playing against the Packers. It'll look weird because, for someone like me who's been watching football since I was 4 or 5 years old, all I've grown up with was Aaron Rodgers in a Packers jersey. And obviously he's been gone from the Packers for a bit now, but it's going to kind of hit me watching him and seeing him, getting hit by Green Bay Packers jersey. I'm going to be like, whoa, God, this really does feel weird. I'm excited for it, though. It's going to be awesome. I think Cowboys, Broncos, and Packers, Steelers are the 2 best games of the weekend for sure. And I like it because they're in the 2 prime slates. They're in the 125/425 afternoon slate, and then they're the Sunday night game. And the only thing better than that is when we have good Monday night games. And unfortunately, this week's Monday night game is not that great. Now, I think it would be a whole lot better if we had the reigning offensive rookie of the year, but we don't. The 3-4 Commanders visit Arrowhead. They're facing the 4-3 Chiefs. The Chiefs are an 11.5-point favorites. Yikes. 47.5 point over-under. No Jaden Daniels for Washington. That's tough. Hamstring injury. Hopefully he's not out for too long because, I touched on this on the recap pod earlier in the week. Jaden Daniels and the Commanders have a rough 3 weeks ahead of them, and if they don't get Daniels back soon, are they going to have a chance in this 3 week stretch against teams like Seattle, Detroit, KC this week? Probably not. Mariota's okay. It's going to help that he gets Terry and Debo back. It looks like those two are back, so that's Washington's two best weapons on offense back this week. That'll help. But the Chiefs are rolling, man. The Chiefs are rolling, and I think anyone who doesn't think KC is the AFC favorites right now are fooling themselves. I understand what the Colts have done, and if you think the Colts are still AFC favorites, I understand it. But tell me, when that game comes around, even if it's at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, that divisional matchup or that AFC championship matchup, Indianapolis versus Kansas City, who do you trust in that game? Ask yourself. You know who it is. It's the inevitable Chiefs. It's Andy Reid and it's Patrick Mahomes because they do this every freaking year. I don't like them, but you can't discredit their greatness because they had a little bit of a slow start and lost some games that, frankly, previous Chiefs teams wouldn't have lost. Now, they had some issues with their weapons. They've got their weapons right. Rashee Rice looked amazing, and he hardly played in that game. They've still got Xavier Worthy. Kelsey, I was talking down on Kelsey a lot. I really thought Kelsey was washed. I really did. And he's certainly nowhere close to the player he once was, even like 3-4 years ago. But Kelsey's still showing he's got a little bit of step in him. The run game's picking up. Pacheco's picking up a little bit. I really like their young back, Rashard Smith. I really like him a lot. He's really shifty, really good pass catcher. I think that's an element Andy Reid's offense has missed since they had Jerick McKinnon. And Jerick McKinnon wasn't anything crazy, but just having that scat back who could catch the ball out of the backfield really helps an Andy Reid offense. And they've got that in this rookie, and they trust him more. I don't think this game is close. I really don't. Washington having their weapons could help, but I don't think this game is close. I think we see KC score another 40 points, maybe not 40, but, they just whooped the Raiders, a team that couldn't hang with them. And I think without Jaden Daniels, this Commanders team probably can't hang with the Chiefs. I like the over on this game. I like the over at 47.5 points because I do think with the weapons with Terry and Debo back, I think Washington could score some points in this game. But I think KC's going to get out in front early. They're always going to be up 2 or 3 scores. And I think Washington's points they'll score will be, maybe not garbage time points, but every time they score, KC will score back. And the whole game is going to be 21-7, 28-10, 35-17. It's going to be one of those games. KC is rolling right now. If you don't think KC are the AFC favorites, you're fooling yourself. They look unbelievable right now, and the record's 4-3, but the only thing that could get in KC's way right now is not getting home field advantage just because the Colts are off to such a great start, and they have a little more of a favorable schedule than KC does. But, man, the Chiefs look freaking good right now, and it's funny because me personally, I look at the AFC right now, and I see KC, and I see Indianapolis. The rest of the teams have serious weaknesses, and even KC and Indy have some weaknesses. KC doesn't have a good run game. Indianapolis doesn't have a great passing defense, doesn't have a great secondary, especially with Mooney Ward out. But then I look at the rest of the AFC, and it's like glaring weaknesses. Baltimore's defense is nowhere close to where it needs to be. And Lamar's health is still in the air. Who knows? He could retweak his hamstring. Buffalo's defense just doesn't look great. I don't know if I'm ready. Drake May and the Patriots have been great. I don't know if I'm ready to call them AFC contenders, Super Bowl contenders quite yet. And the Chargers, too hot and cold for me. I think that conference right now is a real two-man race. The NFC, I keep saying this, the NFC is such a bloodbath, and there's 6 teams at 5 wins, plus the 4 1-1 Packers. It's an unbelievable conference. It's going to be so loaded. There's going to be some teams that miss out on the playoffs in the NFC that do not deserve to miss out on the playoffs. Meanwhile, in the AFC, I think, I don't want to jump the gun, but this AFC playoffs just feels so obvious right now. It feels so obvious that it's going to be Indianapolis is going to get the 1 seed. KC is going to be the 2 or 3 seed. KC is going to win their games. They're going to face Indianapolis in the AFC Championship, and then KC is going to win the AFC Championship because this is what they do. It doesn't matter what seed they are, as long as they have Patrick Mahomes and as long as they have Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo calling that defense, the Chiefs win freaking playoff games and they go to Super Bowls. And I'd like to see some disparity. I'd like to see a new team in the Super Bowl because that one year that we saw the Bengals in the Super Bowl, it was so refreshing. But you have to admire the greatness of this Chiefs team. Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are inevitable, man. They just are. And yeah, I think Chiefs, Colts, clear AFC favorites right now. And the NFC's wide open. And that's what I love about this NFL season. Definitely some new faces, some new teams, some surprises, and it's been great. And I think week 8, couple good games. Not, there's been some more stacked weeks, but I think it'll be fun. And, really the story of week 8 is all the bye weeks. And I think some notable teams like this, like the Seahawks, like the Lions, like the Rams are on bye. And I think those bye weeks are going to really help their teams. In terms of fantasy football, everyone's scrambling to set lineups. I'm starting Matthew Golden this week. I'm like, oh, this is great. I get to start Matthew Golden when Christian Watson's back. But, it makes fantasy, bye weeks are part of fantasy football. I wish the NFL spaced them out more, but this is the reality. And yeah, that's my week 8 preview for everybody. In summary, I think the best games, Denver, Dallas, Pittsburgh, Green Bay. The Chargers beat up on the Vikings in Thursday Night Football. Big surprise there. And I hope week 8's a good one. I really do, like I do every week. And that'll give me more content to talk about when I recap it on that pod that comes out next Tuesday, or this Tuesday. So that's it. I appreciate everyone for tuning in. UFC 321 is on Saturday, NFL Sunday, and Monday Night Football, of course. So I will have my reaction to UFC 321. That will come out Sunday morning. And then my reaction to NFL Week 8 will come out on Tuesday morning, so I can get that Monday Night Football reaction in there. I always like having, a 2-day span. My biggest pet peeve with podcasts is when they release a podcast and they talk about material in the podcast that is going to become irrelevant the next day, right? If you're releasing a podcast talking about Thursday Night Football on Thursday morning, if people don't have time to listen to that podcast during that day, then they're not going to watch it after Thursday Night Football. I want you guys to be able to take in the information, have some time. So 2 days before UFC 321 to watch the 321 preview pod, 2 days before Week 8 for you guys to have the Week 8 pod. And if anyone's here to the end of the podcast, which I kind of doubt it considering we're in the beginning stages of the podcast, I truly do appreciate it more than you know. I'm having such a blast doing this. I'm not worried about followers, views, likes, or whatever. I already got my first hate comment on a YouTube short. I was like, hell yeah. That means I'm doing something right. But really, this is just fun for me to do. It's taken some time out of my life for sure, but I love it, and I'm getting more comfortable talking in front of the camera, trying to look at the camera more. So I can't tell you guys how much fun I'm having doing this and how appreciative I am of everyone still being here. So I appreciate everyone, and as always, I'll catch ya.